on the ship, we were in mid-storm, and there was a wave. There was a transition of captains during a storm, and they took their eye off the ball for about 20 seconds, talking to each other on handover a shift, and a rogue wave come over and hit the ship and threw everyone out of bed. The alarms have gone off, everything's going red, the lights are flashing, everyone runs to the mess. There's a mess everywhere, glass is smashed, everything, as you can imagine. And turns out that, we were about a degree away from almost capsizing on the ship.
Okay, the recording is starting, and we are recording, gentlemen.
It's cold as ice.
You know that you are
Cold as ice.
cold as ice to me. You're as cold as ice. Yeah. We're ready to sacrifice. What else? You know the song, Tom?
Never heard of it.
Cold as ice.
Beautiful, just like the original.
Very good.
So why we chose Cold of Ice, because we have a special guest today. Our very good friend Tom Clements is joining us. Cold as Ice. Why Cold as Ice then? Why is that a relevant theme tune?
Well, my man right here, he's on a stint in the Antarctica.
Wow.
Interesting.
So,
Tom, how did you... do you want to tell your tale, Tom? How did you end up out there in Antarctic?
It's a long story. How long do we have?
17 minutes we just wasted through singing.
Okay, right, there we go. Well, basically, how I ended up there was it was like a crossroads in my life. I worked at a pharmaceutical company for 10 years, and I was an engineer there, up and coming engineer, and the place closed down. So I had to make a life decision what to do next. There was a big redundancy package waving in front of me, and there was a job position in America, so I didn't really know what to do at that point. On a lunch break one day, a chap walks in with a piece of paper and says, "Oh, this is a bit of you, you're a bit crazy," and it was just a big A3 sheet of a "We Want You" almost type poster of Antarctica, and I'm not kidding you, that was the situation. It was Gary. I remember him now, and it was
Gary wants you.
Gary wants you, and Gary the Penguin. I applied for the role down there. I didn't think I had a hoping else chance really to get the job. Lo and behold, they gave me a position as an 18-month chief engineer on a science station down in Antarctica.
Wow.
Yeah. So then that was the start of almost a four-year journey, so to speak.
Sorry, Tom, who were you working for down there?
British Antarctic Survey.
Oh, the Russians.
I went to the Russian station once on the way in, a place called Novo, and characterizing Russians. They are as they seem. it was vodka and like fish stew and stern brows. It was pretty much you couldn't make it up. But it was it was part of the journey.
Tom, tell us about that journey out there, because that sounds hectic. How do you end up? How do you go from? Where'd you go from? And you stop off at a few places and end up there, right?
Logistically, as expected, the Antarctic is a nightmare. There's no quick way or means of getting in. The way we got in there the first time was we flew to Cape Town, spent 2 weeks in Cape Town, and then we went from Cape Town to over to South America via a couple of stops, and ended up in Buenos Aires, like a southern point of South America. From that point on, this is only one of the routes in, by the way. One of the means of getting there was a small plane. I can't remember what it was, a Dash 7 or something, but flying from South America over to Rothera, which is on the peninsula of Antarctic, and that's a British Antarctic station. I think it's about 60 degrees south. You stay there for however long it takes, and then you fly another 8.5 hours to the 8.5 hours to the location of a stop, a fuel station in the middle of nowhere, and then another 8.5 hours to where we were. But you're very dependent on weather windows. There's always, for flying small planes in such a harsh environment, you're very, it depends on the weather. Literally every day, there's no guarantees. So from UK to Antarctic, the quickest way possible, it took us 3.5 weeks. On a boat, there's a ship on the way out. So the way out, I'll jump in the gun a bit here because 18 months in between. But on the way out, there's a ship which pulls up on the edge of the ice shelf, and then that is a 2-week voyage over to the Falkland Islands, out across the Drake's Passage, Cape Horn, or no, not Cape Horn, Drake's Passage, I think it's, but it's the roughest sea on the planet. And for somebody who's never really been on a ship bar a ferry over to the Isle of Wight, you know, it was hard. It was a very difficult journey, that's for sure. It's there's one point, one of the dangerous points of my time there was on the ship. We were in mid-storm, and there was a wave. There was a transition of captains during a storm, and they took their eye off the ball for about 20 seconds, talking to each other on handover of shift. And a rogue wave come over and hit the ship and threw everyone out of bed. The alarms have gone off. Everything's everywhere. You know, the lights are flashing. Everyone runs to the mess. There's a mess everywhere. Glass is smashed. Everything. You know, as you can imagine. And turns out that we were about a degree away from almost capsizing on the ship, because you have a certain degree before you at the point of no return, and we were very close. Very scary.
So what were you doing when you were there, Tom? So you were an engineer, right, in Antarctica?
Yeah, there's the first visit there, I was 18 months. I was the chief engineer. I was the lead engineer for the engineering team. So basically, what our role to do is I'll run through a bit of engineering behind the station, what the station is. So Halley 6 is a modular movable ice station based on the Brunt ice shelf near the Weddell Sea in Antarctic. Each module has its own designated design. You've got 2 living modules, 2 energy modules, 2 science modules, another living module, and an operations module for like comms and stuff like that. The engineering energy modules have 4 big generators in, combined heat and power generators, and they run everything they just run everything on the site. So they have heating, cold water, everything. So power, and my job was to make sure that all the systems within the engineering side and of the modules are running throughout enabling the science. So we're facilitating the equipment and power to the science kit, all the way dotted around through cables and stuff to the science stations around where we live. So it's 24-hour, can never turn off. There's a lot of redundancy built into the system. So my role was to just make sure I'm on top of that, as well as manage some small projects during my winter period there. So replacing bits of kit, you know, I won't go into detail of engineering and bore you, but just engineering small projects. And then the second visit, so then I went back to Cambridge. They offered me a role as a mechanical project engineer for relocating the ice station itself, because when we were there, we found out that there was a crevasse heading directly towards our station, which meant that about now, the station, if not relocated, would have fallen into the sea. So it was a team of 6 of us. We went back to Cambridge. We planned everything and how we're going to dismantle the station, relocate the station 22 miles inland. And it's the first time ever that a station has been relocated and moved across an ice shelf. So it's a real feat of engineering, without saying so myself.
So how has it moved, Tom? Is it like on rollers, or do you just pull it along?
Well, they're all on hydraulic skis. So you've got hydraulic ski system. During the winter months, you jack them right up. So then you get an infill of snow throughout the winter season. And then you come in, you lift each ski and you pack it, and you essentially rise the modules every year. So you keep it above the snow. There's modular connections, so flexible hoses and services between. So you've got to decommission the whole station, move out all the science, build a temporary camp, temporary science station, temporary living accommodation, everything, disconnect every module, drop it down, support it structurally, and then have heavy machinery, be it piston bullies, dozers, like all specially modified tractors, things like that, and you literally just tow it to the location. There's a little bit more to it than that, but you just tow it to where you need to go and drop it off and connect it back up, and away you go. Over a course of 6 months, because we're governed by a weather window of 6 months. There's only 2 seasons down there, winter and summer.
And so the seasons, there are periods that you get 24 hours of light, and there are periods of 24 hours of darkness. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's
what was that like?
Difficult. I say difficult. It's different, very different. The 24 hours of daylight wasn't too bad. Because we had blackout blinds. If anything, it was you really learnt to push yourself a little bit more. I don't know. It's sort of like, because have you heard about SAD syndrome and the lack of natural light and things like that? And when you're exposed to a lot of light, naturally your body has a darkness and a light in a normal cycle of a day. So you kind of know, you almost subconsciously know when to sleep, know when to start relaxing, and you have your schedule. When it's light all the time, you kind of just carry on. You almost need people to tell you to stop, or until you're physically drained. And there's times when we were drinking, we would sat there in an evening and we'd have a few drinks, and before you know it, you look at the clock and it's like, bloody hell, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. It was that bad, honestly. It was totally like. It was that, but that was the summer months, the good months, because the glory years, because it was warmer, so you could get out, you could do things. But the winter months, it was bleak, very, very bleak. Minus 55 degrees, 70 plus knots of wind, which brings the temperature down to sort of almost minus 70 plus. Cannot go outside. Oh, you can go outside, but you have to be fully covered. Every part of your body has to be covered. Any skin exposed, anything below minus sort of 30, 35, you will you lose a limb very quickly. I've had frostbite a few times. Frost nip was very common. Every one of the engineers, we all had frost nip, bitten fingers quite a lot. It's quite common there. But it's a hard transition to get it. That's for sure. There's no way of saying how people are going to react. Everyone's different. I really found personally that discipline in routine was key to keeping your mental state and well-being just there. I made sure I was up. I made sure I went to the gym every morning. I made sure little things. I made my bed. Diet. You have to eat at the same, or not the same time, but you have to eat within the same times every day. Make sure you spend time switching off. Make sure you interact with people and you don't isolate yourself, because there's a couple of people on my team, very high profile people within the science world and other worlds, of industries, who I would have expected to be very comfortable in that situation. They isolate themselves in their room for almost 5 months. We were bringing them dinner. We had to constantly check on them.
What were their names?
It was that. And no, I can't disclose names. You never know who's watching. But yeah, it was tough, very tough. Like the darkness was very, very, very tough. We carried out a test whilst we were there for the European Space Agency, as it's the closest thing comparable to being in space is being in Antarctica for isolation, environment or lack of environment, and the social aspect of being in close confined areas with small amounts of people for long duration. And we did a lot of tests with Europeans, like so it's got cognitive testing throughout the duration of your stay in light and dark and full darkness, things like that. Physical testing. We had to do. We also had to do like a Soyuz simulator, which is a space station, a docking space station for like satellites, and we had to do a simulation of how we react under sleep-deprived situations and lack of light, and we had to physically replicate docking the space station into the European Space Station, and it was actually classed as space hours. So we got a certificate at the end of it saying you've got a certain amount of space hours, like you do as a pilot. if you ever want to become a astronaut.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so it's loads of things going on. But yeah, no, for seasons, it's summer and winter. Summer's fun, winter's cold and also fun.
Sorry to keep asking the questions. I'll let you two jump in. This is my last two questions for now. So you mentioned their food. My first question is, what do you do for food? You can't just pop down the supermarket. You know, there's no corner shop for a pint of milk.
Yeah, it was.
Again, Dan?
Maybe Iceland.
Hey. So what do you do for food, and how was it? You know, stuck in a pretty small space with a bunch of strangers for months and months on end.
And how many people were there, Tom?
I'll go with the food first. Yeah, we had a chef. So there's a designated chef. She's really good, actually, bless her. And we have tinned foods. So we have a fresh food for the duration of the summer. Every time a ship turns up, they bring a bit of fresh food, but that only lasts so long. So then for the rest of the season, it's 6 months, 7 months plus. It's tinned food, so there's no fresh food. It's as you guys know, nutrition is key, and you can only get a certain amount of nutrition from tinned food. It wasn't the greatest, we there's only so many because one of the things, steak. We had a lot of steak from South Africa. That's the last trip where the ship goes to South Africa and it collects all the meats and stuff like that. So we end up having like Springbok steak and things like that quite a lot, and it's a bit boring. It's monotonous food. You don't get any real enjoyment out of it whilst you're down there. It's purely fuel. It teaches you to have it as fuel. It was. Things like that though. This is one of the things I learned down there. You can either make it an issue in your head and moan about it, or you just think, well, I'm here, I'm not getting out of here. You just get on and eat and think of it as a fuel. So yeah, it wasn't a Buenos Aires steak, put it that way, but it was.
You don't mind a tin of John West, Tom, do you?
Fray Bentos. I don't mind a Fray Bentos. And what's the other question, James? Sorry.
So what was it like stuck in a small space with people that you didn't even know before?
It was interesting. You know me. I'll say I'm not anymore, but I'm always quite emotionally volatile as far as airing an opinion and things like that, if that's a polite way to put it. But the people that I had there, for some reason, I don't know if it was just a stage in my life, but I didn't really think about what I was doing until I was like 3 months into it. I just did it and I was there, and before you knew it, I was like, Christ, I'm here for a long time. I don't really know any of these people, and it kind of hit me a few times once I had the opportunity to get out that there's certain character traits people had, and things that people had that were niggling at me from an early stage of in the whole process. But you learn that everyone is different. Everyone has their own positives and negatives around you, but it's how you cope personally with other people's. It's not a flaw, is it? But it's their personal attributes and what they do, how they speak, how they clean their teeth, how they eat their food, how they walk. All these small things that that when you're so confined with someone for such a long period, 18 months, because there's no space there. We're talking. Your place in Latvia, James.
Yeah.
A module space was about the size of your kitchen and living room. So that's one module. So you can't really get away from each other, especially in the winter months. You can't get out. But I had one argument when I was there, and it wasn't really an argument. It was over. It was over something really petty. I think it was about leaving rubbish in one of the snowcats. The mechanics was like, "You left some rubbish in the snowcat," and I
hate it when that happens.
I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "I'll go get it," and then we fell out and we shook hands an hour later and said, we both know that we cannot hold a grudge down here.
Yeah.
Because you just can't. You've got to wake up each day, see each other every day. We're all so reliant upon each other every day. And what we do, I think we spoke about this, James, the other day about it's almost a communist social state there. There's no money. that changes hands. There's no taxes. There's no bills. No letters. No internet. No TV. Nobody is in a hierarchy. It's a flat line. Everyone is as important as each other down there, and we all respect that and see that. And it's kind of that mutual respect of everyone and how they are, has to be maintained throughout the whole time. And there's people that like, I learned to grasp that and be like that quite quickly within my time there. But there's people that don't. Their character.
What happens to them?
As you could imagine, you put people in situations which are very strong-minded and will not change. They clash. They clash with people, and they isolate themselves. And naturally, people talk within groups, and then there's divides. And I think the worst case they had down there, one of the teams had a full divide midwinter, and they moved half the station to a cabin 2 kilometers away, and it was almost science divide from everyone else, from like the engineers and the operations team, and they just moved out, didn't talk, never said a word to each other. And it's complete. The science data from that year was a bit, So I can't mention the year, but if you ever see any trended data from atmospherical science or things like that, you could probably tell the year, which was the year of the big fallout. The year of disrepent, I think they call it. Yeah. Sorry, I just waffling on there.
No, that's brilliant, mate.
What was your question, mate?
Oh, I just thought at a time with James's one about how many people were there, because I don't know, but I don't think you've meant how small were the teams?
Well, in the summer, there's 50 to 70 people in the summer months, because you do a lot of the engineering, refilling, refueling, a lot of the works in the summer. And in the winter, it's between 11 and 15, 16 people at max. I haven't really said about the location, because Antarctica is such a vast continent. It's massive. There's like islands just off Antarctica, the southern hemisphere. We're talking inland. The depths of Antarctic. This is stark, no topography, flat line. White on white. That's the reality of the environment we're there.
I feel like where you were was how you picture when Antarctic in your head is where you were, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was surreal. My whole journey and time there was just surreal, and I learned so much about myself, so much about things that I really wish that I could have ingrained into me as a person, because I'm back in the rat race now. I'm up in London, stressed to the eyeballs, chasing money. How life is. But then when I left there, I was so free mentally. I had so much thinking time. I really learned, what was important in life, and and touching on one of your podcasts the other week that money isn't important. Especially down there in that environment, it doesn't matter how much you got in the bank. Down there, the snow and the ice and the cold is going to get me. It's going to get him. It's going to get the richest person if you make a mistake. It's an amazing place. A couple of, I think we said it before as well, but moments in your life. Yeah, things that's chapters in a book and moments in your life. I've had 90% of my moments have been down there. Ice climbing in a bay and looking out and seeing killer whales poking their head up not too far away from you, looking at you, just sat there in isolation, like, me and a couple of guys surrounded by 10,000 emperor penguins with chicks running over you, things like that. You can't. Now I look at it and I look back at my pictures. I've had a look at a few of my images today. I still can't believe it, and it's a absolutely amazing place. I would say I would recommend it if anyone ever gets an opportunity.
When's easy jet flying down there?
Oh, I think not to give it COVID, post-COVID, I think.
Was there ever any indication on the job offering that it would be so challenging? Like, did anybody ever brief you or prepare you or tell you it's psychologically and physically demanding, or did they just ask for engineers, come check us out, and that's it? And you discovered everything else when you went there, or did they warn you, like telling you that it's about a month to to get there, and that's the fast way, and all the other things?
You know what? I was there was definitely a physical test, so they do some physical testing, and then there's previous mental health issues on a medical cert. They don't test you prior to leaving.
I think something like a Big 5 personality test would be quite useful. Like if you're really high in volatility, I don't know if they should be sending you down there to explode.
I think no, I don't. I don't think that would pay any real relevance down there. To be honest, it would highlight volatility. But what we do, because I've employed a fair few people that go down there and work, engineers, and it was a method of we would take people away for the pre-deployment training for 3 weeks, and one of the age-old tests of seeing a real man side, we go to the pub and we get a gut full of beer down them, and you get a gut full of beer down engineers, and you can really see their true colours, how they react with people, how they will react with people that are also had a few beers, because that's the reality of it. People may drink, people might not drink when they're down there, but you know. And we had the best engineers you could ever imagine down, like on the pre-deployment course. Really good. On paper, they're fantastic. They passed every other test top of the class. And then he had 2 beers, and he's trying to punch someone. You know, he's swinging at like one of the bosses, and you think, well, straight, you know, you can't. That's the social aspect of an interview process, you know, which you don't see anywhere else, and you watch people closely, and we really put them in situations on that 2 weeks of where they're going to be stressed out. We make them freezing. It's almost like paramilitary.
When you were describing it, I was thinking it seems like a military experience. That's that sort of extremeness, and then you come back and you are a different person because you have to transform.
For the better, it's hard. I was surprised that we didn't do a psychological test, but then I don't know. Can you? If you're forced in a situation, can you fraudulent, or can you falsify a psychological test? I don't think.
I mean, if you're claustrophobic, I think you're screwed if you're not testing that before, right? I mean, I think a lot of it will naturally come out there. I don't think there's any real rule or rhythm to understanding how people are going to react in that situation, because until you've done it. Like the dark, like I would advise people. Like my advice, if one of you guys were going down there, I'd say, you know, keep in your routine, keep mentally active. You're gonna have negative thoughts. You're gonna be sad on days. You're gonna miss people. You're gonna miss popping to the shop. You know, being able to put the telly on, go on the internet. You know, you're gonna miss things that but it's how you cope with that. You work yourself up to a point where you're the only one that is struggling, or do you just kind of go, right, I've accepted it, now you kind of get on and move on, and you're soon home. Right.
Dom, do you hear any kind of stories of past times when they've had bad times out there in that sense, like what we're talking about?
Definitely there's what do you mean in the sense of losing their mind and
real bad reaction and they've had to go, or
there's a few times when we were there. People, everyone's individual, as everyone knows, and everyone reacts differently to the environment that's there, and it's more so the acceptance of the key time is prior to the winter. You can physically watch people accepting that they're about to commit almost, I'd say, 6 to 10 months of isolation and that no way out scenario, and a lot of people hesitate and they go, no, I've got to go, and they bail at the last minute, and it's very difficult. It's a difficult one, and for me it was more so don't think about it, and I didn't. I was really trying to be naive and upbeat until midwinter. That's when it kind of hit me. A few days I was like, this is tough. This is tough now. But I ended up, you do things. I learned to play the guitar when I was there. I did a lot of drawing. I made a lot of like sculptures. We did a thing called the Antarctic race, where we race all the other stations in the continent. So we all sign up to this race, and whoever can get the furthest distance logged on miles or wins the race. So naturally, being competitive, I was up at, I'd say, 4:30. I'd row 3 hours in the morning. I'd do an hour and a half at lunch, and I'd sit in the gym doing another 4 hours in the evening. This is every day.
What's that, Tom? Running or skiing? Or what?
No, because there was like a matrix of mileage. So rowing,
right.
every time you rowed a meter on a rowing machine, it would be times by 3. Every time you did a run, it would be times by 1.5. Every time you did a cycle, it was just 0 miles, because the effort put in equation to the distance put out. So I worked out that rowing was worked out that I could quite happily sit on the rower and just have food next to me and just pull while I watch a film and just plug away. And it was that for that month that kept me focused, kept me physically active, physically fit. And because physicality, you've got to be fit there. Skiing, you're walking in thick snow, you're skiing everywhere. It's quite, testing on the body. I wouldn't be surprised if that's why I've just had a hip replacement, to be honest. One of the reasons of
Let's have a look.
I've actually got the bones. You want to see it?
well, I mean, this would be a good time to go into, but I mean, has anyone got any more Antarctic questions?
I think you've touched on them all.
Would you like to tell the epic lorry story, Tom? Because it's a beauty.
Well, yeah, let's move on to the next. Chapter 7 or what it is. That's a new one.
If you want to, Tom, it might be a...
No, yeah, all right then. Why not?
I'll tell you that I was in Cambridge at the time doing a teacher training course, and Tom was living there too. And one day he said, "Oh, come down to the Lido on the green." So I finished my studies for the day. I went down there, and the bastard didn't turn up. And I kept ringing him. He wasn't answering his phone. I thought, "Oh, screw you then." So I did my swim and went home. And where were you, Tom? What were you doing that afternoon?
I'll do anything to not swim. I was circling a roundabout. I went out for a leisurely cycle in the morning, which turned out to be a very fateful day, and ended up underneath the front end of a articulate lorry being dragged down the road.
This was a regular route, Tom, wasn't it?
Regular route, yeah. I was doing a time trial. I was just getting back into cycling at the time, so I just bought a nice new bike, and I was going to do a 10-mile sprint. So I did my warm up near my house, near Madingley. Got to Madingley Hill, come onto a roundabout, lovely sunny, warm morning, no cars around. Went across the roundabout, went to go straight across, and a lorry on my left-hand side. I knew he was coming, but I assumed that he saw me and was going to stop. And then, before you know it, he's here. I've sort of turned, faced the lorry, and he just clouted my head, and I've luckily got a good grip of the bumper before I went down, my fingers, and just got pinned and held on, and assumed that he was going to stop. And it was surreal by that point, and then it was becoming to a nightmare very quickly. I heard him change gear. In my head, I thought if he goes off on the next exit, he's going to stop in 20 yards because there was a stopping point, which I was happy with. And he didn't obviously go down there. He started going down the dual carriageway slip road. So I thought, game over.
So he hadn't even realised, did he, that you were underneath?
I hadn't even realised, no, sadly. And he, luckily, another driver saw me get underneath and stopped him, and all of a sudden slams the brakes on. I come out along with the bike and stuff like that, and I laughed at first, couldn't believe it. I sort of hopped up, all my kit was ripped off to part of my shorts. I sort of shook my hands, shook my legs. I sort of knew that I saw the blood from my back and stuff, but couldn't believe the luck, But I think what you're kind of edging on is the story. I think I've told you guys a couple of times. I couldn't believe the cognitive side of your brain. The fundamentals of fight or flight. I've seen it straight up, and it is the most amazing thing has ever happened to me. Well, obviously not, but at the time, but I managed to risk analyze every situation of where I was at, what to do, what not to do in the space of a millisecond. I knew that he's going round a roundabout. If I let go now, I'm not James Bond. He's going to run me over. Don't let go. I thought, and then the thing if he goes over the next stop, he's going to stop in 20 yards. Just hang on. If he goes there, and then I thought, get a good grip of here. And I evaluated about 5-6 different scenarios and how to get out of it within a space of about a second, 2 seconds. And it was lucky, luck, fate was on my side. Didn't have me that day, but it was, after that, it was kind of hard to accept a lot of the factors.
Just to give the detail, Tom, when you were held onto this lorry, your back was kind of bouncing on and off. It wasn't as if you were on the front; you were underneath it.
Yeah, I was
bouncing, but you were drawing yourself up. I remember you saying you had kind of superhuman strength in your feet at this point because that's all you had to cling on to.
It was the adrenaline. The adrenaline just kicked in, and it was pinned. So luckily, my feet were still clipped into the bike, and the bike was underneath, and it was actually hitting the wheels and pulling me in. So I pulled my feet up underneath, so that I wasn't getting pulled under, and that kept my legs off the floor. But it also forced my just above my bum and my back down, so it was like pinned to the tarmac, and it was bouncing along. And as you can imagine, it was like a cheese grater. My back is, you've seen it.
And what the nurse said to you, didn't she, about your burns?
It was she about the she I said, when I first got to there, and actually I just said, what do you do? Have you seen this before? She said, to be honest, we've only ever seen friction burns like this on fatalities. We've never seen something like this on a person that survived. So it was at that point, I was kind of a bit of a medical experiment, painful medical experiment, because they had to do a thing called debridement for every day for like 2 months. So it's just a case where they literally pull off all your fresh skin, cuts, scars, scabs, everything around there, and there's no nice way of putting it without a brush and a rag and a little bit of gas and air and a bit of plastic to bite. And it was by far the most painful, torturous thing I've ever had. So
because what was funny knowing you at the time, because we saw you that weekend, didn't we? You came out of hospital and we came round, and you were kind of giddy.
Yeah, I was
seemed that bad, and then obviously talking to you throughout the recovery when they were cleaning your back and everything, you seemed in such lower spirits during that time. I couldn't believe how the pain came after. It was the knowing, wasn't it, of all the. It was.
I think it was the understanding. I've always been injured from injuries from riding bikes and stuff. So I just assumed it was a cut, and I thought they scab over and you're up and about in 2 weeks. And nobody really told me the process because I don't think they really knew. But yeah, so when you saw me, I was very high on morphine. It was all fresh. There was no.
I thought you were just happy to see us.
Oh yeah, and that, of course. But I was very high, and it was the. I hadn't started healing, and then I remember the first time they went in and did the debridement. It was a stark realization of what was to come. They said, this is going to happen every day, and then I thought it couldn't get any worse. It's not. I'm like sob story here, look. But when the nerves started growing back, and they still had to clean it, and you imagine new nerves. It was very painful. Put it that way.
So you sorry, Matt, because I don't want to miss these little details because I remember the story well. But you were saying about the where you go and get cleaned, and there was people who were getting their similar injuries, and you said when they were. Do you want to describe that?
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was no way of putting it. You're in a room. There was 4-5 other males in the room. It's a shared ward, all burns victims, different types of burns. One of the poor chaps was about 65, fell over in a shower, knocked his head, just had it on the hot, just scalded himself head to toe. Other people messing around with bonfires and stuff, like just burns. And anyway, to this debridement thing they have to do daily on severe burns. So you're in a room, there's one washing facility, and these poor nurses come in, they go to guy number 1, they take him in there and they clean him, and you hear male screams, and then it goes, he comes out in tears, goes to the next one, comes out screaming, an hour cleaning, comes out, he's almost he's like in tears, almost in tears, then the next one, and then you just know it's your time's coming, and it was almost like a torture, and it was trauma. That was the trauma for me that caused me to have a bit of PTSD and stuff after, which is now sorted out through EMDR therapy and that. But yeah, it was things like that. They haunt me forever. More so than the accident.
Sorry, mate. Go on.
No, I just say it haunt me more so than the accident. The accident, once I accepted the short 10-second period of what happened in the accident, it was the recovery process, which was difficult to get over. Yeah. So word of advice, for lorry drivers that are on the phone, it hurts.
He was on the phone. Is that why he didn't see you?
He was on the phone. Turns out he was on the phone.
Bloody bastard.
And he'd done it before a couple of times as well. So it's
I think for the bike helmet, brother Clem, as well.
The bike helmet.
Yeah.
Well, that took the brunt. Took the brunt of the.
Could have been a different.
Yeah. Wear your helmets.
Wear your helmet.
But no, that's another chapter of my life, and I all these things, go back to Antarctica and that, and it really, for me, it really puts things into perspective quite harshly. There's a lot of people. I'm this is why I see like the good and the luck of it. I can see that a lot of people haven't got through things like that, and they haven't survived things like that, and now I can see there was that new fresh dating point of life to react to, rather than getting stressed and pent up and things. You think, hang on a minute, that's your fresh. You remember that moment. You remember those moments of harshness and starkness and darkness and injury. And it's nice, and it's kind of molded me to be like I am now, I suppose. Really.
You're living a fine life now. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's
fine.
it.
It's a fine young man.
Respect.
You'll live happily ever after.
Because I've got.
How's the baby?
Yeah, she's brilliant. Got my baby. When's the podcast coming out, by the way? Because I can give you some good news now.
Go on.
Live on the show.
Baby number 2.
Sorry.
Whoa!
Number 2.
Good stuff, well done.
And this is again, to touch on one more thing. The path of my life, the lorry, the Antarctic, it set me on a path to meet my current and to be wife one day, and has allowed me to have this love and part of my life and kids and things like that. So there's all that negativity and pain and everything I went through, not pain. It's all worth it. It's all worth it now. And I wouldn't change it.
I love it, man.
Amazing.
Thanks, man. Beautiful.
Perfect, mate. Perfect.
Thanks very much for coming, Tom.
No problem. Anytime.
Sharing your stories.
It was a pleasure.
You've had a few stories, man.
Why are we making these podcasts? Because 3 heads are better than 1. We'll combine our experiences and research on engaging topics to learn a bit more each time, enjoy the chat, and improve our own communication skills in the process. Innovation comes from the ability to correlate information between different realms of knowledge, and we all have very different realms of knowledge between the 3 of us.
Why the Hydra, you ask? In archetypal mythology, dragons guard piles of gold. Overcoming fears can bring great rewards. What you most need is often where you least want to look, and we won't shy away from the fire to challenge each other and reach that goal.
What's in it for you, listener? Learn, laugh and love. Get involved and join us on this adventure.